So I thank you that you are here today and that you're here every time when we gather together, because we gather in your name and you are in the midst of us. So thank you, Lord. I ask you to help us to have open eyes and open ears when we listen to your word. Speak to everyone here. Speak to every heart, and just let us come from this place, go from this place like lifted, where we have received something new from you, your word, and what you want to do for us. I ask you, Jesus, to let us experience who you really are, and to let us feel and have the conviction of what you have done for us and what that means for us. So I just invite you into this place, and thank you for that you are always here with us. Just bless your name, Lord. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Amen. It's good to see you all here. For those who don't know me, my name is Anki. I'm pastor here in the church, and I'm so happy to see you. And today I want to talk about the story of the prodigal son. You might have heard that story, or you might not. You might know what the prodigal son did, or you might not know that. But today I want to look especially at the characters in that story. I want to look at the father who had 2 sons, and what that means, who these characters are representative of. But before we go into that, we are going to look at a video that is telling that story with some kind of pictures and images. So let the movie begin.
Luke chapter 15, verses 11 through 32, the parable of the lost son. Jesus continued, "There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, 'Father, give me my share of the estate.' So he divided his property between them. Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had, set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in that whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. When he came to his senses, he said, 'How many of my father's hired men have food to spare, and here I am starving to death? I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired men.' So he got up and went to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. The son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his servants, 'Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' So they began to celebrate. Meanwhile, the older son was in the field. When he came near the house, he heard music and dancing. So he called one of the servants and asked him what was going on. "Your brother has come," he replied, "and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound." The older brother became angry and refused to go in. So his father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, "Look, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours, who has squandered your property with prostitutes, comes home, you kill the fattened calf for him?" "My son," the father said, "you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found."
Yes, that is the story or the parable of the prodigal son. And a parable is a story that wants to teach us something. It wants to give us a certain truth, but instead of just saying the truth, Jesus often uses this method. He's putting it in a story. So he's telling a story to the people. And in any parable, the characters become representative of either you and me or God. There are different parables where all these characters represent someone. And that's why Jesus is using that method. He's speaking in parables. It might teach us something about who we are, our attitudes. It might teach us something about who God is, what characteristics he has, who he is and what he does. So speaking in parables was very effective, because if you would just state the truth, maybe people would not listen to you. But Jesus used it so that when he taught a parable, they were like listening, they were interesting. What is going on? What is this story about? And mostly, the people who were listening understood that Jesus wants to say something through that parable. And that parable, Jesus is telling it in the context of two other parables. The first one is the parable of the lost sheep, where a sheep is gone and then is found again. The second one is the parable of a lost coin, where a woman loses a coin and then she finds it again. And here's the third one about the lost son. And I think it's a very beautiful parable that tells us about the heart of God. It shows us what kind of relationship we can have to God. So it begins with a father who has two sons. And the younger son says, "I want my share of the inheritance now." And normally the inheritance was not given before the father died. So what he is saying basically is, "Father, I can't wait for you to die. I can't wait until you're no longer around. I want you dead now. I want your money. All I care about is your money. I don't care about our relationship. I just want your money. So give it to me now." And in this parable, the younger son is a picture of somebody who wants to go his own way, a person who runs after the desires of his own heart, a person who's chasing after the things of this world and thinking that these things will fulfill him in some way. They will fill his heart. A person who says, "I don't need God. I don't need any relationship to him. I can do everything on my own." And the father, he's a picture of God, a picture of the character, who God is and what he does. And in this case, I think it's very interesting to see the reaction of the father. The son comes and he demands his share of the inheritance. He says, "Father, I want you dead. Give me my money. Give me that what belongs to me. I don't care about you." And then it is written in verse 12, "So he, the father, he divided his property between them." Isn't that crazy? I think we would expect the father to try to say something to the son, try to reason with him and say, "Do you even know what you are saying here? what is going on? And try to bring him back to his senses. Or we would have expect the father to react in a very angry way. Say, what are you talking about? How dare you talking to me like that? You want me dead? You don't care about me? All you care about is the money? So I think it's interesting to see the father's reaction. He just gives him what he asked for. He just gives him the inheritance. So what are we supposed to think about that? What are we supposed to think about the father's action towards his son? Especially in light of the fact that we said that God is a representative of the father. The father represents God in this story. So Jesus is telling a story where a father is approached by his son and says, give me my inheritance. I want you dead. I don't care about you. And the father just gives it. Without asking, without discussing, without even saying something. Just here you go. Take it. Why is the father reacting like that? If we see the father as a picture of God, it means that God lets us have our way. He doesn't always intervene. And that's because we have the freedom to do our own will. He has given us our free will. And some of the decisions in our life, some of the bad decisions in our life, God lets us make them. He lets us go our way. Because it's the freedom of our own will that makes us human. And God is not going to take that away from us. So he lets us do and make some stupid decisions in our life. And sometimes I really wish it wasn't like that. Sometimes I wish that God would just protect us like we protect babies from anything that could harm them. But God has given us a free will, and he lets us make decisions, even if he knows they might not be good for us. And it shows me also that God is willing to endure the agony of rejected love. And I think the most painful thing is when you love somebody, but that person rejects your love. If you have been in a relationship where that has happened, I think you know the pain that rejected love means. And the greater the love, the greater the pain when that love is rejected. So God is giving us freedom to choose. But I think there are also other reasons why God lets us have it our own way. I think he wants to show us also what really is in our heart. Because our actions, everything we do, reveals what we think or what we have in our heart. So once the father gave the younger son the inheritance, what is he doing? He is just running away. He takes his money and he left to a far country. And that is another decision that he must have already in his heart. He must have thought about it. Once I get my inheritance, I'm gone, I'm out of here. I don't want to be any more close to my father. So that is a decision he had already in his heart, something that he has thought about, something that he has nurtured in his heart. So when the physical act of leaving came, when he left his father and went into a far country, that was just the evidence of what was in his heart. So I think it's the same with us. Whatever we do shows what we have in our heart, what is in the inside of us. And that's why it might be also difficult to talk some people out of something when we know maybe a friend of us is doing something that we know it will not end well. And we try to reason with that person, we try to think logically, but it might be difficult to talk that person out of the decision. Because once you have nurtured something in your heart, once you have wrapped your mind around something that you want to do, it's difficult to talk you out of that. And I think God knows that as well. I do think he tries to talk us out of things, bad decisions. But in the same way, when we have decided something in our heart, it might be that we are not listening to the ways that God is reaching out to us. He wants to keep us safe, but maybe we're not paying attention to what he's saying. I see that every now and then with my children. Sometimes my children have the most stupid ideas. You might know how children are. Once we were on a vacation on an island here in Sweden, and there was these very high rocks, like 2-3 meters, and my son climbed up. And I said, "Mama, I'm going to jump." I said, "No, you are not. You don't jump from that rock, because I know you will hurt yourself when you do that." I said, No, Mommy, I will be fine. Everything is okay. I jump. I know it will be okay." And I tried to talk with him. I said, "No, don't do it. I know you will hurt yourself." And there were like small rocks on the ground. But he didn't want to listen. So what did he do? He jumped. And what happened? He hurt himself when he landed on the rocks. And then he came to me and said, "Mommy, how did you know that I would hurt myself?" I say, "My son, it's experience. I have learned myself. Sometimes we learn by experience, and sometimes we have to learn the hard way." Would you agree that we learn more from our failures, from our bad decisions, than what we learn from when we do everything right? So that's why I think we have to be merciful with others' failures, with others' mistakes. Be merciful with others. And I'm saying that to myself because we learn so much when we do things wrong. And hopefully we won't do it again once we have learned it. So sometimes we have to learn it the hard way, and that is what we are seeing here in the parable of the son, of the prodigal son. So the younger son, he's going into a far country. And why does it matter that he goes into a far country? Why isn't Jesus saying he's going into another town where maybe nobody knows him? When Jesus is saying he goes into the far country, that means he's going outside the border of Israel, outside the culture. And if he had gone somewhere in his own culture, everybody must have known who he was and what he did, and it would not have been seen in a good light, his actions. So he goes somewhere far away, as far as he can from the father, from the family, so that he doesn't even have anybody talking to him or doesn't even need to think about them. And once he's in that far country, he's living the life he wants. He was looking forward to it. He has it in his heart. That's what I want to do. No responsibility, nobody telling him what to do, nobody telling him where to go, when to do. But as we expect, it doesn't end well. It's written in verse 14. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in that whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country, who sent him to his field to feed pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. So after he lived all that life that he wanted, he ran out of money. He had nothing left. And it just so happened that there was a famine in that land. And he was forced to get a job to sustain his life. And he got one. He got a job to feed pigs. As a Jew, pigs are seen unclean. No Jew would ever go to feed pigs. No Jew would ever be around pigs. But it shows that he must have been so desperate that he didn't care. Just he needed a job to sustain his life. And then he became hungry. And even the food of the pigs looked delicious for him. But nobody would help him. Nobody cared about him. Nobody gave him anything. And I think often when we are having our own will, when we are going our own way, that God lets us take, one day it just happens to come a famine. It comes something, maybe not a physical famine, but it comes something in our life where we realize. And I think misery and hardship, they have this very interesting effect on our life, that we start thinking about where we are, what we are doing, and in some way it is drawing us to God. And that is what's happening here with the younger son. Verse 17, when he came to his senses, he said, "How many of my father's hired servants have food to spare? And here I am starving to death. I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants.'" So the younger son, he sees his situation, he understands that it wasn't right. It wasn't the right decision to leave the father, to leave home. And he decides to go back. And that decision changes his life. But still, he has no idea of how the father will react when he comes home. He has no idea of how the father will receive him, if he will receive him or if he will not. And he is preparing his speech. He's saying, okay, I will say to my father, I've sinned. I'm not longer worthy to be called your son. That's not what I'm asking. Just take me as your servant. He doesn't believe even that the father would receive him. So verse 20, he got up and went to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him and kissed him. And again, the reaction of the father might surprise us. He just throws his arms around his son, hugs him and kisses him. He must have smelled like pigs. But that doesn't bother the father. He doesn't care about it. And Jesus is telling that story so that we might understand the heart of God. And the heart of God is that he is waiting with anticipation for his son to return. How otherwise can the father see the son coming if he's not looking, if he's not watching, if he's not waiting every day? Waiting for the son to come home. And I think that is what Jesus wants to communicate to us. That God is waiting for us to come home. And he's ready to accept us, no matter if we smell like pigs. So that is the heart of God. That is God's perspective. And no matter what you have done or how far you have gone, there's always a way back. God is always ready to receive you. The eyes of the Father are always looking. The arms of the Father are always open, ready to embrace you. He's always ready to receive you. But again, we might expect the father to react in a different way. How would you react if it was your son who said, that, "Dad, I want you to be dead," or "Mom, I don't care about you, just give me everything," and then he comes back? We would expect maybe the father to give the son a lesson on behavior. Like saying, "What are you doing here? How dare you come back after everything you have done to me? And by the way, you smell like pigs." Like really giving it to him. What have you done to me? And I think that was also the thing that the son was expecting. That's why he prepared his speech saying it, "Just let me be a servant. I don't think that you will receive me back because I'm not worthy." But the truth is that nobody is worthy. We are not worthy to be received by God. Nobody of us is. But instead of that the Father is giving him a lesson on behavior, he's giving him a lesson on the heart of God. Who God is. That God is faithful and he cannot deny himself. He is who he is. It's written in 2 Timothy 2:13. if we are unfaithful, he remains faithful, for he cannot deny who he is. That is the heart of the Father. He is faithful. He cannot deny who he is. And because he is love, he is faithful, he is accepting us. So even when we are rejecting his love, he is faithful. Even when we are trying to go so far away as we can from him, he is faithful. Even when we smell like pigs, he is faithful. He receives us. And the son in this parable, he wanted to say several things to his father. But it's like the father is interrupting him. He says to his servants, quick, get a robe, get a ring on his finger, put shoes on his feet, and bring the fattened calf. We are going to celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. And here we see the connection to the other two parables. The lost sheep that was found, the lost coin that was found, and now we have the lost son that is found again. And the question is, how is the relationship between the Father and the Son restored? It is not restored by the Son coming home, but the relationship is restored by the Father receiving him. That is what's making the big difference. What the Father is doing makes the difference. And the hug of the Father changes the life of the younger son. But the hug of the Father also changes the life of the older son. Because when the older son gets home from the fields, he hears the music. He sees the dancing, the celebration. And he's wondering, why is Father celebrating? What has happened? And he asks one of the servants, what is going on? And the servant tells him, your brother has come home. So your father is celebrating. He has received him. And he gets very angry. He doesn't even want to go into the house. So the father has to go out to his second son and talk to him. And in verse 29, it is written, he answered his father, the son answered his father, look, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours, who has squandered your property with prostitutes, come home, you killed a fattened calf for him. You can really tell that he is angry. The elder brother feels that this whole celebration is an insult to his own righteousness, to his own faithfulness, how he has been living together with the Father. He says, what about me? I deserve better than this. And in his pride, he's saying, I've been working so hard for you. I've done everything for you. I've stayed home, and now this son of yours, he doesn't even say my brother. Sometimes my husband says when my son does something wrong, he says, your son. And I do that as well. Look what your son is doing. This son of yours, not my brother. When he goes off and partying and he's spending everything, and he comes back and you just receive him like that. How can you do that? What about me? So the behavior of the older son is demonstrating that he doesn't know the heart of the Father, or he doesn't agree with the heart of the Father, that the Father is just extending grace on his son, no matter what he has done. And that is what God is doing with us. He's giving grace to us, no matter what we have done, no matter how far we have gone. His grace is new every morning. Even if we reject his love, we can come back to God. And as I'm closing, I want to look at the three characters in that parable. The Father, who represents God, and the two sons, who might represent a possible behavior of our attitude toward God and towards each other. And you might be able to identify with one or both of the sons and their behavior toward their father. And I want you to think about, what is God saying to you today concerning these three characters in that parable? First, looking at the younger son's life, we have all gone astray. We have all disappointed the Father. We have all lived in a selfish way. And we all need forgiveness every day. Nobody is worthy of returning to the Father. Nobody is worthy of having the love of the Father. But God, He sent His own Son Jesus to die for us on the cross so that we can come to God. He paid the price, so we don't need to pay it anymore. So when you think about your own life, do you see the attitude of selfish living like the younger brother had? The attitude of saying, I don't need God. Saying I can do everything on my own. Is there anything pulling you away from God, from His presence? And if yes, what is God saying to you? Is there anything you want to do about that? The second, looking at the older son's life, we can all be tempted to think higher of ourselves, thinking we deserve more than others because maybe we have served God our whole life. Maybe we haven't been as bad as others who might have murdered somebody. Maybe we never did anything so stupid or so bad. But it doesn't matter, because everything against God is against Him. Doesn't matter how big or how small. And we might even say, God, what about me? Why are you receiving others? And why are you maybe not blessing me? What about me? And I want you to think also about your behavior or your reactions towards other people who might have done you wrong, who might have hurt you, who might have abandoned you, who might have done anything against you. Is there anything like the oldest brother's unforgiveness in your heart when you think about other people who have wronged you? What is God saying to you? And what do you want to do about that? And lastly, third, looking at the Father's reaction. The faithfulness and mercy that God extends to us is greater than anything we can ever imagine. What you have done, what you have said, doesn't change whose you are, because you belong to God. And when we come home, we are received with open arms. He is taking us in His arms, embracing us. We are called His children, and He is always ready. He is always looking for someone to return, ready to forgive us. How can that truth apply to our life? The truth of the heart of God, what He has done for us, and how He reacts towards us. And the Father's reaction is also an example of how we ought to treat other people. We are called to forgive others because we are called to do what Jesus has done. We are called to forgive them. We are called to be merciful. And as I said, we all make mistakes and we learn mostly so much from our mistakes. So we ourselves are called to be forgiving other people because God has forgiven us. God has been merciful to us. You have made mistakes in your life. I have made mistakes in my life. So let us be merciful with others. And how can that truth change your life? How can that talk to you today. We have Simon who wants to give us a testimony today about what God has done and sing a song that he has written himself. That is, he will tell us more about it. So welcome, Simon. We are excited to hear what has happened and what God is doing